Hello, everyone. Again, brief description on points to ponder of an issue that we can see here from a particular chapter. We're moving on now to chapter 6. So again, if you've been following these, they're taking up about 7-8 minutes, up to maybe 10-12 minutes. And it's just looking at a particular chapter and describing a current event that relates then to that chapter. So again, chapter 6, and this deals with political socialization and public opinion, this chapter. So we're looking at public opinion on this point to ponder and some of the differences that we see here in the United States. So looking at public opinion and race, and again, that's been a theme that we've covered in some ways already this semester. And I think it's worthwhile because it clearly is an issue in our news currently. So what you can see here in the text is that you will be experiencing in your life considerable changes here in the United States. We've already seen that happen, certainly in some states more than others. But your text mentions that by the year 2045, so that's 25 years from now, many of you will be in your 40s. At that time, the United States will become a majority-minority country. And so that will mean that some of you, of course, that are taking this class, you'll be part of a group that will be the majority, made up of Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American population. It will be a larger percentage of the overall population of the United States than the white, non-Hispanic population. So we are seeing that demographic change occurring here in the United States, and in the next 25 years, we'll continue on that pace. Now, on the issue of race, and we can see how things may be changing because of the demographic makeup of the country, but currently we can see that there are differences among the races and the racial outlook, depending on how people view themselves of a particular race, and then how other people may perceive them. As a result of that, we can see some differences here. This is in page 219 of your text. There's an excellent bar graph that shows these differences between Black and white America. 5 years ago, you had a considerable difference, as we can see there, between Black and white America on the treatment of police. This is the perceived treatment. So 90% of Blacks agreed there is unequal treatment by police, while 54% of whites agreed. Now, I do think one part of that that's interesting is it's still a majority of whites did agree, but there's a considerable gap between Black and white America. And so in recent polling, I mean, this is polling that's just roughly a week old, how serious a problem is racism in the United States. And here we can see continued gap between one group of Americans and other groups. So among all Americans, if you say it's either extremely or very serious problem, you're looking at 63% that believe that based on this poll. And this is a very reputable poll, the AP poll as it is oftentimes cited. Then you have Black Americans, 90% that view it that way. White Americans, you're looking at 57%. So there's a gap there, 33% gap between Black and white America. How serious is the problem of police violence against the public? Now, there has been some differences here. So 5 years ago, notice the gap there between Black America and white America. There's a gap between Black America and all Americans, but the gap between Black America and white America, 73% to 19%, so a 54% gap. By 2020, it's now a 40% gap. And it's a case in which both groups have increased their viewpoint that this is a very serious issue, extremely serious. Extremely or very serious is what you can see over on the side there, left-hand side. So 83% of Black Americans in the poll, 39% of white Americans. So the gap went from 54% to 44%, still pretty considerable, but the gap has shrunk in some ways. Now, well, 10%, it's shrunk by that much. And this was a very revealing poll as well. Are white people treated more fairly than Black people? And again, we see a pretty good sized gap on dealing with the police. But there's a fairly large gap, in fact, even larger in some areas, when it comes to applying for a job in stores or shopping malls and getting health care. So we can see across the board that there's a different perception on how white and Black America are treated in the public arena. But of course, mainly we're looking at the issue of police treatment. And here we have points to ponder. I don't have an answer here. Your text really doesn't give too much of an answer. Certainly in chapter 6, it's just showing public opinion. And the snapshot that we're showing here is that there is a gap between Black and white America. I think probably the beginning point for us is to at least acknowledge that there is a gap, and then to start to wonder why there's a gap and how is it possible to reduce that gap there. And one of the issues that certainly has been brought out, and here's just looking at a picture of what a police officer might be like at any given time. I'm sure you can't read the captions there. This is going back to the 1700s up to modern time. Now, the police officer that we can see here on the right is depicting a SWAT officer. So this individual is going to be more heavily armed than your typical police officer. But it is, of course, an issue that's been brought out recently, is that police officers are militarized and that they need to be using more combat-like gear that you would expect a soldier or a Marine to be wearing. But is it possible that the reason why they're doing that is that Americans are more armed and perhaps are more violent and are willing to take more chances? And so therefore the police officers have to be, in that case, more prepared. So how do we unwind this situation? How do we perhaps get us all into a calmer place? And that's a big question. And I would hope that we can find an answer. But this chapter, and the point to ponder from this chapter, is that we clearly see a difference in the opinion, especially between Black and white America. So that's what I'll leave you with here, just to think over that information from chapter 6, read over and certainly look over the bar graphs. You might want to share that information with some other people in your family or friends that you have and say, this is just what we're seeing in the United States. There clearly is a gap in the perception on how people are being treated. Okay, we'll be moving on to the media for chapter 7. So we'll have another recording soon.